Alex, I think this episode's it's going to be a little all over the place. I've got a lot of different things I want to talk to you about. It's going to be a little bit here. It's going to be a little bit there. We're going to dip a little bit into religion, I think technology, mindfulness. So it's going to be a little here, a little there. But above all, you know what this one's going to be? It's going to be a fun one. Hello and welcome to the Forbidden Dinner Table. I am Zach.
And I am Alex.
And we've got a great show in store for you. Going to be covering a variety of topics today. So not going super deep on one thing, but we want to touch on some things we've talked about in past episodes and maybe just go a little bit deeper on some of the things we've previously brought up. So I hope we're not going to be too kind of zigzaggy through the forest, hopefully getting a little bit of a through line. But yeah, I've got sort of some topics here that I'm excited to get into with you, Alex. But before we do that, I know we have a few callbacks. You want to take us to those?
I do, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm still kind of coming down from the high of our last couple episodes with a guest. I thought that was a lot of fun. And one thing you said as I was listening back to it really stood out to me. And you were talking about AI writing like an article or a news piece and us not being able to tell, first of all, if it's written by a human or not, and that it could write it differently based on who's reading it. And this sort of spun me off into a little something that I already know is happening in the advertising space, where think about when you are maybe going to watch a YouTube video and an ad pops up. I know they're heading in a direction where that ad knows it's you. And so not only is it targeted for a product that it thinks that you would enjoy, but it will like call you out by name. Or think about an ad that goes, Zach, I saw that you are averaging 10,000 steps a day. Have you thought about investing in new running shoes or something like that?
Whoa. So
it's pulling from other aspects of your life and then really catering the ad to you. And with AI, we can do this. I know this is something that is being worked on. I've heard rumblings of some companies that are making these catered ads based on like your specific energy usage or your specific steps or things like that. And so they can make really, really specific recommendations. So that was just something that I kind of wish that I had brought up, but
that's cool. I didn't know that we were at that point of like what I'll call like hyper personalization. Like obviously I've experienced target ads. Just a funny story. I for work had to do some research about like Medicare Advantage in older populations, and so I was doing a bunch of Googling and stuff like that, and I was doing it, not in incognito mode or anything. And then I remember getting ads for like catheters and stuff, like, being like, "Oh, we think that you're like 60 now."
So yeah, it's like taking that to the next level of going, not only is like, here's a product we think you'll like based on your age or something like that, but based on like your habits, which is obviously more invasive, but it could also get you even more specific stuff that you would actually enjoy for whatever reason. So that was one thing that popped into my head. The other one, going back a couple episodes, you mentioned that at one point you had thought or heard that the Jehovah's Witnesses religion was based on the Dead Sea Scrolls. I went and did a whole bunch of research. Turns out this is false. It's actually
false. I have to print a retraction.
It is false. It's actually based on Bible study from the mid 1800s. Crazy thing. Turns out I did not know a lot about the Jehovah's Witnesses. They're actually more of a doomsday cult than anything else. And they have tried to predict the end of the world multiple times, and as we all know, they have been wrong, which brought up another interesting point of religions are pretty good about being vague. You can't really prove if God does or doesn't exist, and that maybe keeps them around a lot longer. It gets a little weird to me when you have a religion saying on this specific day this thing will happen, and then it doesn't happen. That should be the end of the religion. Like, the fact that they keep going is kind of crazy.
So I also did some research myself after I made that comment. So I was like, let me check if that was right. And here, in the pursuit of the truth, I acknowledge I was wrong and have also looked into sort of the backings of the Jehovah Witnesses, maybe not as much as you have, but also was touching on sort of the doomsday cult things. I thought it was just comical that they made a claim, I think it was the 1970s at some point in there, was one of the largest ones of like, we think that it's happening on this date, down to a very specific date in the 1970s. And then after it didn't happen, they came out and they referenced the Bible. There's a quote in it, this is an approximation, not a direct reading, where it's like, no one knows the exact time or way that the world like will end, or when Revelation will come. And I was like, whoa, where were all your followers? Why weren't they pointing to that when you were making all of the claims?
Well, and then they pick a new day, and if I'm not mistaken, that 1970s one, they moved it up. Originally it was like it will end in 2000, and then they said actually we're going to move that up to like 1970, and then it didn't happen. And so the fact that the religion keeps going after making claims that you can say didn't happen, is kind of crazy to me. That
it's wild too that just before and even after that date that they claimed was going to be the end of the world, they just had these comments of like, blessed are the people who've sold all of their possessions and quit their job and sort of all this stuff. And it's like, oh man, how do you... that's some extreme compartmentalization.
Well, and that's a big problem
and keep going.
In that religion, that's a problem because they're so everything's going to end. They have very low education rates and things in that religion because why go to college if the world's going to end? Or there's people blowing all their money and all of that, and so that's like kind of a problem within the religion. But the fact that they can make those claims and keep going is kind of crazy to me.
It reminds me of a joke where they say, if you want to make a bunch of money, go to a Jehovah Witness and say that you'll take care of their pets when they vanish, but you need the money up front.
That's good.
So,
yeah.
Tying in and jumping into some of our topics here, kind of the Jehovah Witness and just in the space of religion, something that I think I might have asked you once off mic, but haven't sort of, we haven't unpacked, we didn't unpack off mic, and it's something that I'll say this. Normally when I bring things up, I have a pretty good idea of like where I sort of land or where I'm going to go. This is one that is very open. So we might start unpacking this and realize we need to think about it more before we bring it back. But I want to put it out there, which is the idea of worshiping something, right? And when we're sort of talking about the Jehovah's Witness and Bible studies, and they're trying to understand and comprehend and worship their God or who they think is the creator. This idea on the lines of worship of, should you worship something you understand, or should you really only worship things that you don't fully understand? Because if you fully understand something, does it warrant worship?
That's a tough question. I think there's like a sort of a fine line or a gray area in between, though, where you shouldn't blindly worship something. You should know a little bit about it. But I see your point where if you know everything about it, it might not warrant worship. So I think there's like a threshold of you should know at least this much. And there's like some sort of sweet spot where then if you know too much, it maybe isn't worth it. Because you shouldn't be worshiping something that you know nothing about, and it turns out like, let's just say you worship some person, and it turns out they've like killed a whole lot of people. Like you should know that going in, or you should know that they support something crazy like murder or incest, and it's like okay, well, you should know that and then decide, but. Do you necessarily need to know everything? Maybe not.
Yeah, I think part of my struggle with this too is just the idea or the concept of worship itself. Because like my personal translation of that, like when I look at sort of like what do I worship in my life, my immediate response to that is kind of nothing. I have deep appreciation and respect for things.
Yeah.
But also like I don't know if I worship things. I'm trying to think about what's sort of at the very top of my, kind of respect or values, principles, as it were. And some of that is just like family and justice, but I don't worship those things.
Worship's a strong word.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, and I think you and I are more in a camp too of like any loving creator or God wouldn't want that per se. I think respect is a good word and appreciation, but it gets a little weird at worship. I agree with that too.
Yeah, and again, sort of, I guess worship is somewhat of a subjective or personal experience, but there's also the like, when I think about worship, I think about like some ritualistic things of
true.
And some of those things are fantastic and great community drivers or great. You can have fantastic parts of your life in those worshiping elements. I also think you have to be careful because some of them can be very dogmatic or blinding.
Very much so.
Just
which is why you want to know what you're doing and maybe what it represents.
Yeah.
Truly. Which maybe that's more of the answer really, is know everything about how you're worshiping without fully knowing what you're worshiping, if that kind of makes sense.
How you're worshiping.
Yeah, like what do the actions mean?
What are you signing
what
up
are
for?
you saying? What are you but you're not going to know everything about this deity or God that you're worshiping, right? So let's just go like, why do we do this? What's the reason? And is it a good reason or maybe a bad reason that we go, maybe we should cut that part out?
Let's get interesting with this. Let's step outside of religion as worship. I'm thinking about the worshiping a country, like patriotism. Ritual being Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, and you and I have both said that if you take a step back and look at the Pledge of Allegiance, it's pretty weird.
It is a strange ritual.
It's kind of icky. Like if
It's,
any other country was doing it, you'd look at it and go, "Ugh," like that's a little brainwashing.
When it's not in your camp, it feels very propaganda-y. When it is in your camp, it's like, this is normal. This is the best country. This is what we do.
Yeah, which is maybe not the best thought to have. You certainly shouldn't hate your country, but I also think to think yours is better than all others and you know what's best is also not great. That's not the best. That doesn't play well on the world stage.
Yeah, whenever I want to be a little bit of a rain cloud, sometimes when people say like, like America's the greatest country or something like that, my comment back would be based on what metric?
Yeah.
Like how are you making that claim? Because I can show you in math and in a lot of other stuff, we are not number one. We spend way too much on healthcare. We have horrible rates of success for birth. We have a high mortality for women giving birth. Like we are behind on so many metrics. So when you say we're the greatest, why are you making that claim? And normally I would think if I'm just playing the other side, it's sort of like the American dream, freedom. It's a fantastic land of opportunity.
Right. And those are real things. I agree with all your critiques as well. And certainly someone explained this to me, which I thought was really cool too, is America is one of the only places that you could immigrate to and move in and you can become an American. But if you and I were to move to like the UK, you don't become British.
Gotcha.
Which I thought was kind of an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, you're just an American living in the UK. But anyone else can come here and adopt the American dream, like you're saying, and sort of melt in to everything that's going on. Because we are so many cultures sort of converged into one, which I think is a good thing. There's strength in our diversity and all of that, but that's kind of a good way to look at it. I hate the people that are like, well, because freedom. And it's like, yeah, we're not the only country that's free there, big guy. Like,
I'm thinking of a metric that is a really good example of like a quantification of that, like freedom or opportunity. I don't have the actual statistic in front of me, but I would place a wager that America is the number one, you can come here and become a millionaire. Right, like wealth not passed down to you. Now, huge caveat: money isn't everything. There are plenty of happy and fantastic people.
Well, and that's not easy. They're not just handing out millions of dollars or jobs. A lot of people too think I'm just going to go get a job, and they're not exactly handing those out, but they're around.
You can find them. If you can pin one down, chase one down, pin one down.
I also, real quickly before I forget, I heard an interesting thing about the Pledge of Allegiance. Because some of the God stuff now I don't really like. I don't actually think that should be in there. But I read once that if all that you need to really understand the Pledge of Allegiance, and you can kind of even take the weird, like, patriotic stuff out of it, is the first line and the last line. And if you say those two lines, you get the gist of the idea of the country, which is, I pledge allegiance to liberty and justice for all. Leave it at that. And I think that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
The rest of it's just fluff.
I feel like you could create this new movement where people stand for the first sentence, sit for the whole middle, and then stand for the last sentence.
Sure, I'll start it.
I like that, though. That's
I don't
cool.
exactly say that every day before work or anything, but
That'd be wild. I imagine some companies do it, but like if at 8 a.m. your CEO came over the loudspeaker, they're like, all rise.
a bell rings and you all stand up.
Yeah, this isn't weird at all. That was, yeah. So one thing tying us all the way back to the concept of worship. Normally, I think about it through the lens of this religious context, but it's always cool to think about it sort of in a non-religious context. And also, the largest sort of cool example or excerpt I have when I'm thinking about worshiping in a non-religious context is, Alex, have you ever read or heard David Foster Wallace's This Is Water commencement speech?
I have listened to it once. Yes.
It is a huge personal favorite of mine. Every month I try to listen to This Is Water by David Foster Wallace and Pale Blue Dot by Carl Sagan. I re-listen to it every month.
Okay. Yep.
Because it's such a good orientator. And I want to, if you'll embellish me a little bit, I would like to read a small section of This Is Water about worship, which I think nails it. So
I'll embellish you. I think you meant indulge, but I'll embellish you if you want.
If you'll indulge me, thank you. Thank you for the correction.
But yeah, no, please, because it is fantastic. And if anybody hasn't listened to it, go check it out because it is a great speech.
Yes, it's phenomenal. And so yeah, please get your cup of tea, cozy up, and I'll do a little reading here from This Is Water. Because here's something else that's weird but true. In the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there's actually no such thing as atheism. There's no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And the compelling reason for maybe choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship, be it JC or Allah, be it Yahweh or the Wiccan Mother Goddess or the Four Noble Truths or some set of ethical principles, is that pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, if they are what you tap real meaning in life, then you will never have enough, never feel you have enough. It's the truth. Worship your body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly. And when time and age start showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally grieve you. On one level, we all know this stuff already. It's been codified as myths, proverbs, cliches, epigrams, parables, the skeleton of every great story. The whole trick is keeping the truth up front in daily consciousness. Worship power, you will end up feeling weak and afraid, and you will need even more power over others to numb you to your own fear. Worship your intellect, being seen as smart, you will end up feeling stupid, a fraud, always on the verge of being found out. But the insidious thing about these forms of worship is not that they're evil or sinful, it's that they're unconscious. They are default settings. They're the kind of worship you just gradually slip into day after day, getting more and more selective about what you see and how you measure value, without ever being fully aware that that's what you're doing.
So he's taking a broader term of worship, but I totally understand what he's saying and agree with the sentiment.
Yeah. This is towards the end, too, and he goes on to make some other great points, but I just kind of wanted to pause there. I really love the line, you'll die a million deaths before they finally grieve you.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to look at religion as like the one thing that you can't fall into the trap of never getting enough, like God. Like that just doesn't really make sense.
There's no bottom, kind of like it's forever.
Yeah, like,
if you are a religious person, you always want more. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I'm saying you that's one of the things that that doesn't really apply. Because Because if you want money, like he's saying, you'll never have enough money. You want $1 million, and then you want 2 million, and then you want 10 million. But if you're religious, you can't be like, well, I want God, and then I want more God. Like, it doesn't make sense. I've just never thought of it like that. I think that's interesting.
But can't you take non-religious things and say that that's great? Love, patience, justice. You can want, if you want those things, and if you quote unquote worship them, I'd have a tough time saying it's a bad idea to double down on justice. Patience, you can kind of make an argument. You could be too patient.
Now we're going back to our very first episode, and that's how I would construct a religion, would be based off of those types of things. But yeah, that's true. Those types of virtues, if you will, are probably safe.
Yeah.
Which are big portions of religions as well.
Very true.
Maybe that's probably by design. So, but yeah, I think I think you're right.
Thank you for indulging me.
Yeah, it's a great speech. It is a very I think you use the term like orienting or reorienting of just like your thoughts and what's important and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he talks in the speech about being at a line in a grocery store and sort of you're just like frustrated and lacking patience because you're at this thing that you kind of don't want to be doing. And it's like moments like that where if you're fully aware and like fully in tune, you have a choice about like whether you can like let it be angry. You can let that situation anger you, or you can see it for what it is like everybody just trying to get by. And
right.
That the person in front of you also probably doesn't want to be there fumbling with their coupons because they would love, to not have to do that. And the person who's the checker, this isn't their dream job to be checking. It's all sort of part of it. And It's a choice to acknowledge that. I think about, I have sort of classically conditioned myself to wherever I get into bumper to bumper traffic, it is a wonderful invitation to be grateful to start identifying grateful things in my life.
Yeah. I think it is very important to realize, like you're saying, most of the time, nobody is trying to screw you over. Like they're not taking their time in the checkout line because they have some agenda against you. Like they're probably getting anxious because they know that you're getting frustrated. So like there kind of is an opportunity maybe to work together or just keep calm. I think about this a lot when someone cuts you off on the road or somebody goes speeding by you. You could get angry and upset about it, or you could say, I think this is in the speech, maybe they're on the way to the hospital.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're late for a job interview or something, and just like cut them some slack. They're not trying to screw you over. There's probably a reason. I realize sometimes people are just dicks, but it's much better and calmer to just go, ooh, I hope they make whatever appointment it is that they're late for, and then just move on with your life. It's fine. No big deal.
Yeah, he makes a great point, and I think we're kind of talking around it. David Foster Wallace makes a great point in the speech, and we're talking around it here of like 100% of our experience has been revolved around us because we live in our heads and live in our world. And so you have to take a moment to like let that wall come down and acknowledge,
which is hard.
All about you. Yeah.
But it is important, and the way he phrases it is very like, wow, I've never thought about just life that way, about how literally every thought you've had, every interaction has been from your perspective.
Yeah.
And you have to take a minute to go, yeah, and that's true for them too. So you kind of have to take a minute to be like, let's both bring the walls down and meet in the middle and help each other out a lot of times too, of like, they're just trying to get through life, you're just trying to get through life. You could make it easier and help them out or whatever. Just say, hey, take your time. Don't worry about it.
Totally. I mean, this is a bit of a no-brainer, but I've found where on work calls, when I'm, especially with much smaller audiences, if I go in and I sort of like crack a joke or say something and get them to like laugh, the next 25 minutes, they're like so helpful and just all of this sort of stuff, versus if you kind of come in and are like, this is the stuff that I need, right? And you just like flash up, like, these are the bullet points of what I'm trying to get. People can be a little bit more standoff. Not only they'll help you still, but like, it's incredible the calls I've had where like, you just kind of like connect in the first 2 or 3 minutes, and then the next 25 minutes don't even feel like work. because you're just
I
like
could see
trying
that.
to help each other out.
This just reminded me of a joke that I was trying to write about. We all have those days where you don't want to jump on the call. Maybe you're tired, maybe you're hungover or something. You don't want to be at work that day, but you got to jump on and whatever. And that's what you're saying of like, crack a joke, take the edge off. People will be a little bit more open and maybe enjoy it more. But I was trying to write a joke about this where like newscasters, anchors, or people that are on TV, if you watch sometimes, you'll go, that face that you kind of have when you don't really want to be at work? Sometimes you can watch them and be like, that's the face. Like, they don't want to be giving this interview either. So it's really funny. And sometimes they do, but if you just got to watch some interviews and just go, I wonder if they even want to be here doing this right now. And I guarantee you there are times where they don't.
Oh,
So
totally.
it's-
Especially if you can catch a newscaster like before they think that it's cut to them, right? And you get to see them sort of like perk up to then be like, we're on air.
Yeah. But they're probably hungover. They don't want to be there that day. So, but it's funny sometimes to be like, oh, I know that face. I do that too. So
Yeah.
everybody has this. And the people that are more public, it's kind of funny. Do you think Joe Biden wakes up some days and just goes, can I just not today?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, everybody does.
Probably, right? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I'm trying to think of who like is the most chipper, like Tony Robbins showing up to give his speech.
Well, yeah, that's true. Or like, who's the Navy SEAL guy? Jocko, too, seems like always in it.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I don't know. If you start always being on, then
that sounds exhausting.
Yeah, as I say, that you baseline around that, and then it's tough to go up. Really,
True.
too.
That's a good point. Yeah, if you reestablish the baseline, you're kind of trapped in a loop of always reestablishing a baseline and then having to be like, no, I'm really excited this time. It's like, yeah, but that's how you were all the time. So.
Yeah, I can just imagine like your friend who's coming in week after week, and his smile gets wider and wider. And eventually, you just like look like a crazy person at the end of like, I'm so excited to be here.
It's just like a robot.
Yeah, relax. It's just coffee.
All right.
One more thing I want to touch on in the religious space, and then we can kind of move on to a few other short topics. I discovered a new category of person in the relationship to religion. And when I read it, I was like, whoa, that feels so much like me.
You tried it on and it fit?
I tried it on, it fit. I'm a little skeptical. That's a good way to put it. Didn't need the receipt. I'm a little skeptical when I learn about things, and I don't call myself like, oh, that's me 100%, like right out of the gate after I read it, because like I want to sit for a little bit, because otherwise I feel like I would just be like hopping from label to label and stuff like that sort of. But this one was one where I read it and I was like, whoa. It's kind of like those rare moments where, Alex, I don't know if you take a lot of like Myers-Briggs tests or anything like that. Sometimes I have to do strength finders. The like
yeah. Okay.
That sort of Enneagram's a big one. I've done a variety of those through my work, but it was one, I believe, was Enneagram, where you read it and you're like, whoa, get out of my head. Like that is really actually like nails me to it.
Where it's like trying to tell you what kind of person you are, and you go, wow, this is nailing it. Yeah.
Yeah, most of the time I go, yeah, okay. Like,
pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, this sort of matches out. Enneagram was one where I was like, ooh, okay, this has me, I felt the most heard. And this religious term, which I'll get into here, it's called possibilianism. So to be a possibilian. And I'll just read the Wikipedia. It's a short definition, and then there's a little bit more on it, though. Possibilianism is a philosophy which rejects both the diverse claims of traditional theism and the positions of a certainty in strong atheism in favor of a middle exploratory ground.
Oh, yeah. I think we've both sort of said this in previous episodes of like, I guess the closest thing we always thought would be atheist, but you and I both were never really willing to completely rule the idea out.
Right, so that would put us more in the camp of agnostic, usually.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
correct.
Because I
thought that was the right term.
Right, because you and I sort of are like, atheist is a strong position to be like, nope, we know the answer is no.
Right.
Right, that's.
I would not sign off on that.
Correct. So I've always felt a little bit sort of in the agnostic camp as well. But so this is David Eagleman is considered, kind of the one who is, I don't know if he officially coined the term, but it's coined off of a lot of his commentary and his beliefs. So this is from an interview from the New York Times, David Eagleman saying, "Our ignorance of the cosmos is too vast to commit to atheism, and yet we know too much to commit to a particular religion. A third position, agnosticism, is often an uninteresting stance in which a person simply questions whether his traditional religious story is true or true not. But with possibilianism, I'm hoping to define a new position, one that emphasizes the exploration of new, unconsidered possibilities. Possibilianism is comfortable holding multiple ideas in mind. It is not interested in committing to any particular story."
Yeah, I think that sums it up very well.
Yeah. So I thought a lot of things we've talked about, how I've sort of felt it pairs well with our open-mindedness. It pairs well, I think, with like you said, sort of like feeling that some things are a bit heavy-handed of like, this is the answer.
Well, and we're just so curious and on this search for truth and not necessarily willing to, again, sign off that one particular sect has got it 100% right.
Totally. I mean, to speak to some comments we've made in the past about having that line of code in your belief that says, I may be wrong.
Yeah.
And
I think that's a good thing.
I do too. And I think this, to be a possibilian acknowledges that. And I think part of the reason I love it too is when people talk to me about religion, like, oh yeah, there's a God. I go, it's a possibility. Like it just sort of like naturally is.
Well, it's like when people now go like, well, I need your prayers. And I'm like, who do you want me to pray to? Like, can you be more specific? Because you could pick anybody. And sure, I mean, I'll throw something up there, but you don't want me to pick because I don't know.
I'm just imagining somebody who's like sitting with, a clipboard and they're like, tallying all this stuff and you're like, who do you want me to play to? And they're like, I don't know, the sun god Ra. And he just looks up and he like has to flip to a new page where there's only like one or two tallies. He goes, oh, okay, we can do a prayer there if you want.
I'll lob a prayer up there. Just
put one up on the scoreboard.
Just let me know where it's going.
Yeah, so... Do you say that possibilian?
Yeah, I'm gonna do more research on this now because I think that is the best label that you've come up with to describe sort of where we are and how we feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I read that, I was like, oh yeah, this feels like me and this feels like Alex as well.
It'll be weird to have an answer if people start talking about religion and they, I'm Catholic, I'm Jewish, and I'm like, I'm a possibilian, and that is interesting. I've never had an answer, but now you, of course, have to unpack that for most people. But
very true.
But you have like a stance, which is a little bit better in those types of circles than going, oh, I don't know,
right?
Because then they kind of jump down your throat a little bit.
Yeah, because I don't know. The natural response to that sort of is like, oh, you haven't thought about this? Oh, you haven't?
Yeah, or like, oh, you haven't been shown, what I know or whatever. And it's like, well, no, I have though, and I'm just not all in on your particular thing. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, maybe.
That's such the natural stance, though, of like, haven't been shown when you said that, of like, oh, well, if you just saw the information that I saw, you'd be in my camp as well. Right. Which is funny because that's, if you've got a Christian, Jewish person and an atheist standing, they're all thinking the same thing. Well, if you just saw the things that I saw, then you'd be in my camp as well.
That could be directed at any person in the circle.
Exactly.
But you can almost now have a leg to stand on to go, no, I actually have seen what you saw. And I'm just kind of, maybe, I'm not willing to rule it out, but I'm also not like all in.
Yeah, that sign me up. How do I make a prayer to that, Alex? How do I pray to that?
Yeah, do we need some sort of some figurehead of this particular thing that represents not knowing?
Watch us go to build like the Church of Possibilian, which then ends up just being super. I was gonna say being super corrupt. It's a money laundering scheme. But no, we're not gonna do that.
We're not gonna do that.
We value truth.
I love that. Justice. Yeah, I'm gonna look more into that. So cool. Thank you for bringing that up. That is really cool. Moving right along.
We can go one of two places here, Al. I'm gonna leave it up to you. We can talk about consciousness a little bit and the Sam Harris moments, or we can go to morals.
Oh. This is like a choose your own adventure story.
Choose your own. Turn to page 7.
Yeah. I'm kind of feeling consciousness. I know we've touched on it a little bit, but you're so into this field. I want to hear what you have to say.
Sure. So I know you have something related about the sort of Sam Harris moments. I've been sending, just as a little bit of background to people, I use the app Waking Up, which is like a meditation app made by Sam Harris. And they recently added this feature or functionality where now about once or twice a day, they'll just send a 30-second clip, which is, I don't know how to describe them. They're like truth bombs, I feel like.
Yeah, they really are. And it's amazing how little time it takes to listen to something and then just for you and I at least go, whoa, like I never would have thought of that or whatever. Like you said, it's 30 seconds and I then thought about it for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah. And just to give sort of a general example, I'm not going to be able to do one justice here, but something along the lines of like your mind is all that you have. And so why not put a ton of effort into understanding what it is that you're sort of walking around with?
Well, and to add to that, his point is your mind is all that you have because when you have an experience and you feel happy, that's your mind. When you are scared or anxious, that's your mind. When you are grateful for something, that's your mind. So really, everything's coming from your mind, and therefore we should take time to appreciate it and explore it a lot more.
Yeah, well said. Another sort of one of the shortest ways that I sometimes describe meditation is this thing that an example I've heard Sam Harris use over and over again, which is you look for what's looking.
You look for what's looking.
When you take meditation and you sit and you be with your thoughts and you think about consciousness and existence, then you are looking for that sort of stuff, you turn it and you look for what is looking.
Oh, I see. Okay, I think I follow.
Here's
it's very abstract.
Yeah, here's my personal analogy that I've come up with. If you're standing in front, let's picture you're in a house, in a kitchen or something like that, and you're standing looking through a window. Most of the time you're looking through the window and you're seeing the lawn, maybe you see the neighbor out for walking their dog, or you see a car go by or something like that. Meditation to me is taking a moment where instead of looking through the glass, you catch that reflection of yourself standing in the window.
I see.
And so you're not just going through and observing the world, but you're taking time to acknowledge the process of observing the world.
Yeah. It's sort of like thoughts about thoughts.
Yes, exactly.
In a way, but you
look
really,
for what's looking.
Yeah, it's a little bit more directed.
Yeah. But did you want to touch on?
Well, I have. So I have a little thing that's sort of inspired by these moments. I sort of got to thinking about my own, and the closest thing I could compare it to is like what you're talking about, and it's very Sam Harris-esque. My particular little monologue here is about moments, and them maybe little moments that turn out to be not so little, if that makes sense. So would you like me to read you my thoughts on this?
Yes, you have something pre-written?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, so here you are quoting other people. I'm about to quote myself. So here we go. All right. Think about a moment as staring into the blank space. The next thought you have could be anything, but you don't know what it is yet. Don't try to think of one, and if you see or feel one coming, just try to keep it at bay. We don't ever appreciate how cool it is that we will never have this moment again. This moment where anything can happen. We will have more like this one, but never this one again, because when you look back, you'll know what the next thought was. Let me give you an example. You're sitting at a table, and there's one playing card resting in front of you face down. You don't know what it is. As soon as you turn it over, the moment is gone. Not only is the moment gone, but you'll never be able to go back to it. You can think about it and how it made you feel, but you can never really go back because now you know what the card is. I'm going to pause there. Do you have any initial thoughts?
One, I love that analogy of sitting. I just pictured myself at like a wooden table with this one bicycle card, kind of down, and it's like this. Yeah, I think that's my first thought is just I really like that analogy to look at this very special moment of like never having this again.
Yeah, because anytime you go to the memory bank, and even if you sit yourself back at the table, you know what the card is.
Well, or I think about it as you'll never have the moment again, because the next time you have this sort of experience in your memory bank, you will have the last time you did this, what the experience was. And so now it will be a new experience because you will be experiencing something similar or even something very close to the same thing. But now you also have that last memory as well.
Yeah.
So it's brand new in that regard too.
Correct. Yeah. So that's true. I think what I'm getting at here is you can never forget what the card was. Like, you can never go back to the moment where you didn't know what the card was. That moment's gone, because once you turn it over, you'll always know what it was.
Yeah, but can't you get new thoughts, and that's kind of like putting new cards down on the table?
Yeah. You can have other moments, and it's similar, but that particular one is gone. You can never go back to that one.
Oh, I see.
You can put another card down and have a very similar moment, but now instead of the Jack of Clubs, it's the King of Spades. Okay, so it's different. But now you can't go back to either of those two, because if you go, I want to go back to the first one and think about that moment, even if the card is face down on the table, you know what it is.
Yeah. This reminds me a little bit too of somebody explained just kind of a new definition of a word that I'd heard a lot before. They talked about gaps, and a gap being the space between a thought and an action.
Ooh, okay.
And how there's that moment, right, to kind of tie this together, of thought to action, and that just that second, that minute, it could be whatever amount of time, like between, in that valley between those 2 points.
Well, and you have to appreciate that you might not even know if the action you took was the right one.
True.
So I have one more paragraph that's a perfect setup. So here we go. Some of these moments are small and insignificant, but some are quite the opposite. I think about this with choosing a college a lot, and I went through this process and sort of thought about this. I knew that picking college A over college B would change my life forever. It would dictate who I would meet, which leads to what I do with my free time. It could, and in my case did, impact what career I ended up in. The point is not to overthink these moments. The point is to appreciate them. Take a moment and marvel at their specter and their gravity, and then do the only thing that you can do. Turn over the card.
I love it. Yeah, and I mean, I think about this as a single person, about what all of the, I'm going to say shuffling of the deck to give it sort of give a nod here, of like, hopefully when I meet my significant other, I mean, like the college I picked then led to the job, then led to the city where hopefully I meet, like, right? Like that, all of the little ticks and tacks to then.
And it probably will. And the point is not to stress over that and go, oh gosh, I have to pick the right college. No, because either way, you'll end up with your life. So there's like almost nothing you can do, but you have to sit and appreciate that it's like there's a fork in the road in front of you, and you have to say, I'm going to start walking down one of these roads. And that's going to be like, the outcomes are so different. But I'll never know what the other outcome was. So there's no point stressing over it. But just appreciate that little moment that's actually quite big.
That's a good way to put it. That little moment that's actually quite big, because it's both little and big.
Yeah.
It also ties into sort of like concepts of Zen, which makes you think about a really cool Zen story where there's an individual who went up sort of, as the kind of parables go, up into the mountains to sit with some Zen teachers or Zen masters for 3 or 4 days to learn a bunch of different things about Zen. And at the end of like the 4th day, the person who went up into the mountainside from their small village was like, this has been a super enlightening time. How can I condense this and share this with my village? Like, what is almost the shortest version of Zen that I can go around and pass to people, to my village folk? And the Zen master said, you're doing it. It's life.
Whoa. Okay.
And
that
like
could be interpreted a couple different ways, but it's
right. You can interpret that a lot of different ways, and the way that sort of it jumps out to me is like you almost like can't get away from it. Like this is life. Like
you can't get away with it, and then from it, and it's almost like leading by example. Like if you just do it, you're spreading it. You're like you are your own example almost in a certain way, and all that people can do is sort of watch to try and understand better. But yeah, Sam Harris, call me. You can throw that up on your app.
I will write to your moments. I have something. It's not a moment, but it's a thought experiment that I do. I call it February 30th.
Yeah, so you put this in the notes as well, and I'm very curious to hear what this is.
Yeah, so it's almost like a frame of mind to try to invoke that moment of Zen, or like get to that place of appreciation, where when I'm cooking dinner, or like maybe a great example is like when I'm walking down my hallway at work that I've done thousands of times, and it's this moment of just like 2 minutes where I have to walk, go up a staircase and walk again. Something I've done, something I will probably do more hundreds of times in my life. I think about if I've lived my whole life, hopefully to a full 80, and I die, and then somehow through this moment, I get my soul or my experience or whatever, they say, okay, we're going to put you back onto Earth, but we're going to do it on February 30th, which is this impossible day. Nobody else will be on Earth. It will just be you. And you get to walk through your day and appreciate it one last time.
Oof.
And walk and observe the hallway, observe the cooking, do the dishes like you've done it your whole life, but also like this is the last time you will ever do it again.
Whoa. Okay. Yeah, because as you were explaining it, I was thinking about my previous job and walking the hallways, which is so mundane. And like you said, you do it every day. And now I miss it.
Yeah.
Because I don't go to that building anymore. But I didn't know that it would be the last time or whatever. I wouldn't maybe necessarily appreciate it. But yeah, now I miss it.
Yeah, so it's just this kind of thought I have of like when I'm doing something that is super mundane or even something that can be a little bit painful, thinking like, how would I feel about this if this is what I say to my mind, how would I feel about this if I was doing it on February 30th?
Okay. Which you've set that up to now mean something to you.
Exactly.
And all of our listeners. To think about, how would you feel if you were doing this on February 30th? February 30th is going to be this like mystical canon day now throughout our whole podcast.
Yeah. The magical things that happen on February 30th.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's really cool. I like that.
Take it. Use it. Live. That felt like a super weird new age version of saying live, laugh, love.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. Take it, use it, live. We're going to put that on Forbidden Dinner Table t-shirts.
It's either some live, laugh, love or the worst NPC writing ever if somebody hands you a tool in a video game.
Those are the first versions of the AI written blogs. Take it, use it, live.
Take it, use it, live.
Written on February 30th.
Okay. I think we've covered a lot of good stuff here. I want to leave people with one just fun, kind of crazy, cool thought. To wrap up sort of our moving through a couple different pieces here. Okay. This is just, I guess it could be described as a shower thought sort of that I had the other day, which is around the discovery of electricity. And I just had this moment where I was like, what do you think people thought was happening when, I'm talking like 250 or 200,000 years ago, so like very early humans, they were rubbing their feet across like animal skins or bear fur and then touching apart, somebody else, and there was a static shock. Before we knew about electricity, what do you think they thought was happening?
My mind only goes to like it's a test to see if someone is impure or some sort of thing like that, of like just some made up reason that they tried to attribute to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they had to, the different sort of frameworks they had.
I wonder, though, you could go two ways with this, because you could say the shock is based on, like, the person that you touch, or is it based on, like, this animal was dirty, as you were rubbing your feet across the saber-tooth rug?
That's where I go. I feel like the best theory, this is me as a kid, we're sitting in our community circle, like coming up with theories about why this happens, of like, oh, the soul of the animal is like biting back a little bit because it's mad that it got killed. And so like as you drag your feet across it, you pick up parts of it, and then when you touch somebody else, like that's it leaving you.
That's actually a pretty good explanation for those times. Yeah,
I'd be a chief of my tribe.
The shaman.
But anyways, I just thought that there are hundreds of thousands of years, right, where people are experiencing these things and have no explanation, and what would they have come up with?
There's so much of that, though, of like just natural phenomenon that there would be no real explanation for, and they maybe have to make something up. Well, I mean, they had explanations for like volcanoes erupting that were like, oh, the gods are angry or whatever.
True.
And that's the best that they had.
We have these things today. I mean,
that's true.
The best example I can think of is there's a spot on a river where all of the lightning bugs flash at exactly the same time, and we don't know why. Like, you know, you can go slightly down the river, you can go somewhere else in the forest, and it's that normal kind of like, you know, here, there, then these 2, then these 4, then these 5. But at this one spot in the river, they all are like, boom, pulse at once, stop. And
that's
we
wild.
Don't know why.
It's interesting to think about how your brain perceives that too, because if people in your tribe a long time ago were seeing that, they would look for an explanation from the gods. Like, what does this mean? What are the gods trying to tell us? Whereas nowadays, if you and I saw that, we would go, we can probably scientifically explain this, we just don't know how yet.
Yes.
But it's interesting to see the same thing and like look for explanation in different places. Very
true. And just to tie this all back together, you commented earlier about sort of religious claims being somewhat vague. I was reading about some of the like oracle work back in the like Greek mythology time, and some of their claims, like you would go to visit the oracle and they would have these. Now looking back, the ones I read were these kind of great examples of like, where they said things like an emperor went to the oracle and was like, should I go conquer this land or conquer this other empire? And the oracle said, if you cross that river, a great empire will be destroyed. So they went to cross, attacked the empire. It didn't work out. They retreated, but it pissed off the empire enough to come back and destroy their empire. So the one that originally went and crossed the river to provoke was the one that ended up getting destroyed. So everyone was like, the oracle was true, like, you know.
Yeah, but the oracle's hedging their bet with that statement.
Well, welcome to sort of the openness and vagueness, right, of religion that can happen in the past, and how why that popped into my mind was like how we look at things from this science of like explanation piece that is configured in its own way versus religion sometimes that can have this very open-ended way. And maybe I'm missing something and their science can have the open-ended piece too, but to me it feels like science is a little bit, just because of the nature of its process, in that you are proving things false instead of something being completely true claimed.
Yeah. And maybe it's also just because science is a process and you can have something, believe it, and then get new information and change it, whereas that doesn't really seem necessarily to be the case with religions, or at least the core of a religion is never changing, whereas science will be like, oh, okay, let's update it, we had that wrong, or here's a new explanation that sort of overwrites the old one.
It's very tough to update a religion.
Yeah. Well, the core, you can update some of the more arbitrary rules, I suppose, but you can't really be like, turns out we were praying to the wrong god the whole time. We got to go to this other guy.
Can you imagine that, if somebody who like was in a religion for 80 years and then they come out, they're like, we've been doing it wrong the whole time. Are you kidding me? Like, we've been putting up points on the wrong scoreboard this whole time.
Yeah, that would be insane.
That would be a wild experience. Yeah. Alrighty. Any parting words of wisdom or thoughts, Alex?
I liked This felt very exploratory, which I really liked, especially with things about the mind and the moments stuff that we got into. I think that was sort of like the word deep, it keeps coming to mind, but that doesn't quite sum up with what I'm saying. But I just like to sort of explore the space. When we talk about exploring the space, you can explore the space between your ears too, which I think is very interesting.
Well said. I think, yeah.
Or just think about things differently, which is also a core theme of the podcast. But I think we really hit on that today, and I'm just sort of basking in it.
You know what I'm thinking?
What you thinking?
Take it, use it, live.
I'm thinking that is going to do it for us. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Oh, and I don't think I said this on a couple last ones, but don't forget that you can reach out to us at forbiddendinnertable@gmail.com. And if I could add, there's been a little bit of a delay of us getting some episodes on Spotify. That is the fault of the platform that we use to push the episodes to Spotify. They're having some sort of a glitch, so we can't get them up there. So assuming that if you're listening to this as it comes out on YouTube, just know that eventually you'll be able to go back to Spotify or see us in both places. And yeah, that was a little bit of an update that I probably should have said earlier, but here we are. With that, thank you for listening and have a good night.
Take care, folks.